Through the previous chapters where we've discussed nutrition through the life cycle, we saw how important physical activity is at all stages of the lifespan. In our future review of Chapter 18, we'll also see a direct connection with physical activity and common chronic diseases. For now, though, as we go into Chapter 14, you should be able to take a personal view as to how your physical activities meet current recommendations and whether your nutrient and fluid intake are adequate to support these activities. While we often use the terms fitness and physical activity interchangeably, they differ in definition. Fitness simply is the state of being fit, or more specifically, having the characteristics to perform physical activity. Physical activity is defined as body movement produced by muscle contractions. The specific characteristics of fitness, then, which will allow for us to perform physical activity include joint flexibility, cardiorespiratory endurance, muscle endurance and strength, as well as healthy body composition. Let's take a closer look at these necessary characteristics and why they are important. Flexibility allows joints to move freely, ultimately reducing injuries. Cardiorespiratory endurance supports heart and lung function. Muscle strength and endurance enable the muscles to continue to work without tiring quickly. Body composition is optimized as lean tissue or muscle increases and overall body fat decreases. As one becomes more fit due to an increase in the characteristics that I mentioned, there are many benefits to note. Sleep may improve, nutritional health may be enhanced, optimal body composition and bone density can be achieved, immunity is improved, there is a reduction in the risk of certain diseases, heart and lung function improves, there's the potential for less mental health issues, as well as an increase in overall lifespan. In earlier chapters, we reviewed the dietary guidelines for Americans. And under these guidelines, there are also some recommendations as far as physical activity. Choosing moderate or vigorous types of physical activities are important to incorporate. Ideally, participating in 30 minutes of physical activity or more on most days of the week will lead to benefits. 60 minutes a day can have quite an impact on helping us to maintain a healthy body weight. More specific guidelines for physical activity have been developed by the American College of Sports Medicine. These cover those three important characteristics of cardiorespiratory strength and flexibility, which in turn will lead to the fourth characteristic of healthy body composition. Cardiorespiratory types of activities would include running, cycling, swimming, aerobics, jump roping, as well as others. Strength types of activities would include weightlifting, pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, as well as Pilates. Yoga is an example of a flexibility activity, which will then also help to build one's fitness level. Recommendations are also noted as far as frequency, intensity, and duration. The characteristics of fitness that we'll take a closer look at are cardiorespiratory and muscle endurance. Endurance of both of these types is developed through conditioning, and conditioning is best achieved through training. Cardiorespiratory conditioning occurs as aerobic types of activities improve heart and lung function. Ideally, these activities are sustained for at least a minimum of 20 minutes. These types of activities use the large muscle groups, which include the legs, the buttocks, as well as the abdomen. The benefits of these types of activities include increased cardiac output, as well as more oxygen being delivered to the cells. There's an increase in stroke volume, as well as a stronger lung function. Improved circulation, reduced blood pressure, and resting pulse also result. With these benefits, then, endurance increases, or specifically, the ability to perform large muscle dynamic exercise of moderate to high intensity for a prolonged period of time. There's an additional advantage to establishing this endurance. Muscles that are trained to use oxygen more efficiently can burn fat for a longer period of time. This in turn can also then help with weight control as well as achieving optimal body composition. Muscle endurance as well as overall strength is also developed through conditioning, which includes weight and resistance training. These activities will maximize and maintain bone mass, improve posture while decreasing the risk of back injuries. Mental and emotional well-being may result, enhance performance in other sports, as well as preventing and managing cardiovascular disease. Nutrition and physical activity are closely linked. Activities demand carbohydrate and fat as sources of fuel, protein to build and maintain lean tissues, vitamins and minerals to support both energy metabolism as well as tissue building. Adequate water is necessary to help distribute the fuels and to release heat as well as excrete waste products. The mixture of the fuels which are used during physical activity depends on various factors, and they include the diet, intensity and duration of the activity, as well as training. When quick sources of energy are needed, muscles will respond by using ATP or CP, creatine phosphate. There are small amounts of these compounds stored in the muscles at all times, which allows for necessary immediate energy. Examples of quick, intense activities which rely on ATP and CP as a source of fuel include 100 to 200 meter dash, throwing a shot put, driving a golf ball, swinging a baseball bat, as well as what's involved in a tennis or volleyball serve. For sustained or longer duration activities, the muscles must generate ATP from carbohydrate, fat, and protein, or what we refer to as the energy-yielding nutrients. The first one we'll address is carbohydrate. Carbohydrate, as we reviewed in Chapter 4, is broken down to glucose, which is the preferential source of energy for certain body systems. Glucose is stored in the liver and the muscles as glycogen, and during exertion, the liver will break down its glycogen stores, releasing glucose into the bloodstream. The muscles will use this released glucose as well as their own glycogen stores to fuel activity. Glycogen stores can support on average about 2,000 calories of energy, which is equivalent to about what's necessary for 20 miles of running. The more athletes fill their muscle glycogen stores, the longer the glycogen will last during physical activity, which in turn then can increase endurance as well as performance. When glycogen is depleted, the muscles become fatigued and endurance decreases. Glycogen storage and the way that we use glycogen is dependent on various factors, which include diet, intensity and duration of activity, as well as training. Carbohydrate intake has been found to directly influence glycogen storage. Increased glycogen storage will then translate to increased endurance time. There was a classic study conducted many years ago that compared fuel use during activity among 3 groups of runners. One group consumed a normal mixed diet, A second group consumed a high carbohydrate diet, and the third group consumed a no carbohydrate diet consisting only of fat and protein-based foods. You can see based on this graph that the high carbohydrate diet allowed the runners to keep going, increasing their endurance time significantly. This study and many others since have shown that high carbohydrate diets enhance endurance by optimizing glycogen stores. Another factor which affects how long glycogen will be available for use is the intensity of the activity. Moderate types of activity, such as jogging, will use glycogen stores at a slower rate compared to an intense activity, such as a 400-meter sprint, or what's referred to as a catch-your-breath activity. Moderate activities allow for the lungs and circulatory system to keep up with the muscle's need for oxygen. Breathing remains steady, allowing the activity to remain aerobic. While glucose will be used as a source of fuel to some extent, fatty acids will also be used. The use of fatty acids then can help to conserve glycogen stores. With the catch-your-breath type of activities, the availability of oxygen decreases, causing the production of lactic acid. With high-intensity activities, lactic acid can accumulate in the bloodstream, which in turn then causes fatigue and decreases overall endurance time. Glycogen use depends not only on the intensity of an activity, but also on its duration. During the first 20 minutes of an activity, glycogen is used as the primary fuel source as it's broken down to glucose. After about 20 minutes, however, less glycogen is broken down to glucose, and fatty acids become the greater source of fuel if the activity remains moderate, allowing adequate amounts of oxygen. However, if intensity increases or duration is extended, glycogen stores will still decrease. Eventually, the liver turns to producing glucose from lactic acid, as well as from certain amino acids, in its attempt to avoid complete glycogen depletion. Once glycogen stores are depleted, the nervous system, which, if you recall, relies primarily on glucose, can't function, which in turn causes extreme exhaustion. Marathon runners often refer to this point as hitting the wall. The last factor to note that affects glycogen use is training. Muscles that repeatedly are depleted of glycogen can actually adapt to store greater amounts. Conditioned muscles rely less on glucose and more on fat for energy. So glycogen breakdown and glucose use occur more slowly in those who are trained versus those who are untrained. Seeing how important it is then to keep glycogen levels high, what are the recommendations to achieve this? Well, first, consuming adequate carbohydrate. This on average is about 6 to 8 grams per kilogram of body weight, making up close to 70% of one's total intake. Consuming glucose prior to an activity is also important. While a high carbohydrate diet helps increase glycogen stores, the extra glucose source consumed prior may be helpful to support sustained activity. Minimum of about 30 grams of carbohydrate has been found to be beneficial. Consuming a glucose source during activities, if those activities are greater than 1 hour. So sports such as soccer, hockey, tennis, football would all be examples. The amount which is recommended is anywhere from 30 to 60 grams of a carbohydrate source. Also, consuming a glucose source after the activity is important. Muscles depleted of glycogen have been shown to have greater insulin sensitivity. which in turn enhances glucose uptake as well as promotes glycogen synthesis. Consuming about 60 grams of a high carbohydrate food within 2 hours will accelerate glycogen storage. And then lastly, consistent training. As previously noted, conditioned muscles break down glycogen at a slower rate. The next energy-yielding nutrient to address is fat. Sports nutrition experts recommend athletes consume 20 to 35% of their total calories from fat, which is the same as the recommendation for the general population. Restricting below 20% risks the chance of not just inadequate calories, but also nutrients. Healthy fats, such as unsaturated fats, are important to a healthy diet. Consuming high amounts of fat, however, especially if displacing carbohydrate in the diet, can result in poor athletic performance and protein stores, or specifically lean tissue or muscle, being broken down. Just as there are factors which affect glycogen and glucose use, there are factors which affect body fat use. The first to note is duration. Duration of activity affects fat use. At the beginning of an activity, muscles draw on glucose stores and some fatty acids. As activity continues, fat cells will release more fatty acids into the bloodstream. Sustained moderate types of activity greater than 20 minutes will then use body fat as a major fuel source. Intensity is another factor which affects fat use. As the intensity of an activity increases, fat will make less and less of a contribution as a source of fuel. Fat's broken down for energy only by aerobic metabolism, being sure that there's adequate oxygen available. For fat to be able to fuel activity then, oxygen must be abundant and be able to be used. If a person has the ability to breathe steady and easily during the activity, the muscles are getting all the oxygen they need and they can continue to use fat as a primary fuel source. Training is another factor which affects fat use. Repeated aerobic activity conditions the body to draw more heavily on fat as a fuel source. The results are that a stronger heart and lungs will be able to provide more adequate oxygen to the muscles. Hormones are produced which slow glucose release from the liver, which then encourages more fatty acids to be used as a source of fuel. Training also stimulates muscle cells to produce more as well as larger mitochondria. This in turn produces more ATP and increases overall metabolism. We've looked at carbohydrate and fat at fuel sources, but what about protein? Protein is not a major source of energy, and it's been shown to contribute approximately 10% of total fuel both during activity and while at rest. The more highly trained or conditioned one is, the less protein will be used as a source of energy. Diet affects protein use during activity. An intake rich in carbohydrate provides adequate glucose, which then spares protein from being broken down. If a diet is inadequate in carbohydrate content, the body will turn to its protein stores, or specifically to its lean muscle, to break down and release amino acids. These amino acids will then be used to make the necessary glucose. Therefore, to conserve protein and lean tissue, adequate carbohydrate consumption is considered to be crucial. The intensity and duration of activity also affects protein use. Endurance athletes, especially who consistently deplete glycogen stores, will rely more heavily on protein as a source of fuel. We know protein is used to build lean tissue or specifically muscle, but when does this usually occur? Well, during activity, synthesis of body protein is suppressed. However, in the hours after the activity, often referred to as the recovery period, protein synthesis accelerates significantly past normal resting rates. During this muscle building phase, approximately 1/4 to 1 ounce of protein is added to muscle mass. Consuming high quality protein then after activity can enhance muscle protein synthesis. High quality protein, if you recall, we discussed in chapter 6, refers to protein sources which contain all of the essential amino acids. Animal-based proteins contain all of these essential amino acids, and there are also some certain plant-based proteins which also contain all of the essential amino acids. Approximately 30 to 35 grams of protein is what's recommended to assist with increasing muscle synthesis. Taking in greater than 35 grams will not necessarily build more muscle, but will be used to make or synthesize more body protein, such as hemoglobin, neurotransmitters, hormones, and so forth. Specific examples of high-quality protein are listed here. Portion sizes, which provide a total of 20 grams of protein, are also noted. Active people, as well as athletes in training, need more protein than those who are sedentary. The protein RDA for the average adult is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. For active individuals and athletes in particular, the amount increases to a range of 1.2 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. The activity, as well as the intensity and duration, all play a role in individualizing protein recommendations. While athletes should be attentive to protein intake as well as their protein needs, remember that carbohydrate remains a critical nutrient. Without adequate carbohydrate, athletes will burn protein as a source of fuel instead of retaining it or using it to synthesize more muscle. Not only are the energy-yielding nutrients important for activity, other nutrients are also required. Previously, we noted that water is considered the most essential nutrient, and this continues to hold true, especially during physical activity. We not only lose water through perspiration or sweating, but through respirations, or simply the breathing process. Losing fluid through both of these routes dramatically increases the risk of dehydration. Muscle heat can also increase dramatically during activity. It's estimated that it can be 15 to 20 times greater than the heat of muscles at rest. Endurance athletes can lose large amounts of fluid. It's estimated 1.5 liters or even more than that can be lost for every hour of activity. If water loss is greater than 2% of body weight, it will significantly reduce the capacity for the muscles to work. Greater than 7% of body fluid being lost can lead to exhaustion and eventually collapse. To prepare especially endurance athletes for fluid losses, a hydration schedule has been developed, and it includes 2 hours before the activity consuming 16 to 24 ounces of fluid, 15 minutes before 8 to 16 ounces, and then for every 15 minutes during 4 to 8 ounces of fluid. Serious athletes often will weigh themselves after activity, knowing that weight loss is usually reflective of fluid loss. Consuming 16 ounces of fluid for every 1 pound of weight loss is then recommended. We know hydration is necessary to meet the demands of physical activity, but what about sports drinks as an option? First of all, let's look at the composition of sports drinks. They consist of water plus sugar, usually in the form of glucose polymers, plus electrolytes. Glucose polymers may help maintain hydration by allowing rapid fluid transport to the tissues. Electrolytes help replenish those minerals lost during activity. In particular, sodium helps to increase the rate of fluid absorption from the GI tract and helps maintain plasma volume. So who may sports drinks be appropriate for? Well, these types of drinks are thought to be beneficial for athletes who are participating in activities which are greater than 1 hour. Although the glucose component can enhance endurance and therefore possibly performance for the serious athlete, for the average exerciser or fitness enthusiast, consumption of sports drinks may be counterproductive, especially if one is working out to lose weight. Glucose is sugar, providing 4 calories per gram. An average sports drink, then, can contain 50 to 100 calories per serving, basically of empty calories without little nutritional value. For this particular situation, water is considered to be a better choice for hydration. Because of its role as part of the hemoglobin molecule and its participation in oxidation reduction reactions, iron is a nutrient of concern with physical activity. Endurance athletes and female athletes in particular are more prone to iron deficiency as well as its effects. Small amounts of iron may typically be lost through perspiration, but strenuous aerobic activity can promote destruction of older red blood cells, which in turn may affect overall iron levels. The demand of muscle protein, specifically myoglobin, increases iron needs further. Female athletes through menstruation also have an increased loss of iron. The result can be an athlete being very fatigued, very tired, experiencing shortness of breath, and also being unable to use fat stores, specifically fatty acids, as a source of fuel. Because of the risks associated with iron toxicity, however, medical supervision should be used before providing iron supplementation. Rich sources of dietary iron are highly encouraged. Vitamin E is another nutrient which is important for athletes. During prolonged high-intensity types of activity, muscles consume a large amount of oxygen. When that occurs, free radical production increases, which requires antioxidants to be available to protect cells and tissues from oxidative stress. Vitamin E is one of these powerful antioxidants. While vitamin E supplements are not necessarily recommended on a regular basis, including foods which are rich in vitamin E are what is suggested. So various vegetable oils can be incorporated, nuts, seeds, as well as various vegetables. Other antioxidants such as vitamin C and beta-carotene may also be beneficial, so foods which contain rich sources of these are also encouraged. From what we've reviewed, you can see whether you are physically active or consider yourself an athlete, balanced nutrition is important. A diet focusing on adequate water, carbohydrate, and protein can make the difference in physical performance as well as endurance. Including foods which are nutrient dense, which refers to foods that provide adequate vitamins and minerals compared to the energy they provide, is really the basis of a healthy diet. Here are some examples of nutrient-dense snacks which can help achieve a balanced diet. Incorporating nuts can provide protein, fiber, calcium, vitamin E, as well as healthy unsaturated fats. Combining them with dried fruit or seeds will add other minerals and vitamins as well. Yogurt will provide protein, carbohydrate, and calcium. Adding additional fresh fruit to it will increase the amount of fiber and add other vitamins. Low-fat milk or chocolate milk combined with oatmeal raisin cookies or fig bars will be a source of hydration as well as protein, carbohydrate, and fiber. Popcorn can provide fiber, and when coupled with a fruit smoothie, can add to hydration as well as providing vitamins as well as carbohydrate. While food should be the basis for adequate nutrition, some athletes or fitness enthusiasts turn to supplements. Let's take a look at a few of the more popular ergogenic supplements or work-enhancing supplements that are on the market. Caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant that elicits a number of physiological and psychological effects in the body. The claim for caffeine use is based on its potential ability to enhance endurance and alertness as well as reducing fatigue. Studies have shown that it does not enhance endurance, however, it may have an effect on increasing alertness while reducing fatigue. However, the use must be weighed against its adverse effects. Some of these common effects are stomach upset, headache, nervousness, as well as diarrhea. Caffeine-containing beverages should also be used in moderation, if at all, and in addition to other fluids, not as a substitute for them. Caffeine is a restricted substance by the NCAA, or the National Collegiate Athletic Association. This association only allows a certain amount of caffeine to be consumed prior to competition. Urine tests showing larger amounts may actually disqualify an athlete from participating in an activity. Creatine is another ergogenic supplement. It's a nitrogen-containing compound derived from the amino acids lysine, methionine, and arginine. They combined with phosphate to form CP, or creatine phosphate. Creatine phosphate is stored in the muscle and it can be split to form ATP. The claim for this supplement is that it enhances energy and muscle strength. What studies have shown is that it may be beneficial for short-term, repetitive, high-intensity activity, such as what's involved with weightlifting, sprinting, etc. It also has been found to potentially increase muscle size and strength, hydration to cells, and overall glycogen storage. However, there has been no effect on increasing endurance with this particular supplement. Up to 5 grams a day is considered safe. Taking larger amounts, however, has been determined to be questionable. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that creatine supplements not be taken by adolescents who are under the age of 18. This is due to a lack of studies with this population and potential adverse effects. Dietary nitrate is an inorganic compound found in the air, water, as well as in certain vegetables. These vegetables include spinach, celery, radishes, lettuce, and beets. The claim for this particular supplement is that it improves oxygen use by muscles. Studies have shown that nitrates are converted to nitrites upon ingestion. Then they are converted into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is an important signaling molecule which improves the muscle's efficiency in using oxygen. By increasing nitric oxide bioavailability, dietary nitrate supplements help to reduce oxygen consumption, improve performance during moderate types of activity. These would include walking, running, rowing, as well as cycling. It's also been found to improve exercise tolerance at more vigorous intensities. There are also supplements on the market that fall under the category of being dangerous, banned, or illegal. One to note are the anabolic steroids. These are derived from testosterone, the male sex hormone. And what they do is promote the development of lean body mass, but along with it, the development of male characteristics. Athletes who take steroids do so to stimulate muscle bulking. The known toxic side effects of steroids include extreme aggressive and hostility, which is often referred to as roid rage, heart disease, as well as liver damage. There are also steroid alternatives being marketed that are derived from plant sterols. These are poorly absorbed and cannot be converted to anabolic steroids. Natural does not mean harmless. Some of these so-called natural alternatives can contain dangerous toxins. DHEA and androstenedione are also used as alternatives to anabolic steroids. They are hormones which are made in the adrenal glands that are precursors for testosterone. They claim to burn fat, build muscle, as well as slowing the aging process. Studies, however, show no evidence of such benefits. What may result, however, are the adverse side effects of acne, liver enlargement leading to liver disease, testicular shrinkage, as well as aggressive behavior. A wide range of athletes also use HGH, or human growth hormone. The claim for this use is that it can help build lean tissue and improve athletic performance. The fact is that in large quantities, HGH increases body organ and bone size, a condition known as acromegaly. Other potential side effects include diabetes, thyroid disorders, heart disease, and overall a decreased lifespan. The majority of performance-enhancing or ergogenic supplements are not effective and in some cases can be dangerous, as we have just seen. There is no magic pill or substitute for training, good nutrition, and mental focus to help optimize one's physical condition and overall health.